Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to our guests and our live viewers. Welcome to MDM Live, brought to you by Asian Institute of Management. I am Charisma, your MC for today. I am proud alumni of AIM, MDM Batch 2015. The experience and learnings I gained in AIM have contributed much to where I am today as a leader. Currently, I am the president of Sulu State College here in the southern part of the Philippines, the province of Sulu. Join me in witnessing different stories on leadership. I know that today will be fruitful, inspiring, and we are all honored to be joined by the different empowered leaders who made significant impact in their respective fields. But before we start the program, allow me first to discuss our house rules. First, for the information of everyone, this webcast is being live streamed on the Institute of Management Facebook page. A recording will be available to the public after the webcast. The Zoom meeting may be heard to the AIM community for educational purposes. You may ask questions by typing your questions in the Q&A. Attendees' audio and video are disabled as this is a Zoom conference. We invite you to interact with the panelists via the Q&A chat box. So let's start the ball rolling. It is impossible to give respect, value, and admire great leadership if one cannot identify what makes a leader great. While the tide is changing and more women are being elevated into the leadership roles, there are still much work to be done. This afternoon, we will be listening to the inspiring stories of leadership from the leaders coming from the different countries, such as India, Pakistan, and Philippines. How they navigated the societal divide that called them to act so they can reshape the future. This event is a collective effort on the part of the Stephen Zweig Graduate School of Development Management and MDM 2015, who wrote the cases on Asian women leaders and their important significant contributions in the government, community, and business. We also shall be celebrating the launching of the e-publication of cases and to engage in knowledge sharing with MDM Live viewers. That includes the AM community and the social media followers. Today, we are so blessed to be joined by our moderator, who is a social entrepreneur, leadership brand coach, and a clinical professor at the Asian Institute of Management. She teaches courses related to leadership, personal branding, and management communications across all programs. She is particularly interested in the realms of diversities of thought and bringing your whole self to work. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Professor Harini Chari.
Thank you so much, Charisma. It truly is an honor to share a seat on this panel and interact with all of you inspiring women. On behalf of the Stephen Zweig Graduate School of Development Management at the Asian Institute of Management, I warmly welcome all of you to this very special edition of MDM Live. We are here today to celebrate the launch of the e-publication of 3 case studies showcasing Asian leaders and the important work that they effect around government, community, and business. And this initiative is a collaborative journey between the Stephen Zweig School as well as the Masters in Development Management, particularly the batch of 2015. We are thrilled to showcase today 3 case authors, Hamza Sundar, Nazreen Ahmed, and Charisma Ututalum, our very own alums from the MDM 2015 batch. We are also here today to engage, share, and learn more about the inspiration behind these 3 cases. We are honored to have with us these very prominent leaders who have been the key stimulus behind these case studies. Elsa Marie De Silva, Lubna Hashmat, and Dr. Leah Pakis. I welcome you all, and I hope we have more of a conversation, sharing our stories and just learning from each other. I welcome you all to the plenary.
Thank you, Harini. It's really great to be here.
Great. Elsa, let's start with you. As the founder of and the CEO of the Red Dot Foundation, both in India as well as in the US, you've done some pretty great work out there. And I, as a storyteller, am particularly curious about the storytelling aspects around your unique platform called Safe City. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little more about the work that Red Dot does as well as Safe City.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I'm grateful to Hamsa for also, thinking I'm worthy enough for a case study. Not just me; it's the cause that is most important. So, I live in Mumbai, India, and in December 2012, I embarked on this journey of social entrepreneurship. So when I say that, what do I mean? Because prior to that, I had a long career of close to 20 years in the aviation industry across two of India's largest airlines, Jet Airways and then Kingfisher Airlines. And in 2012, I went through, a series of self explorations. I had had enough of the corporate life. I wanted a change, but I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. I was searching, much before 2012, a year before that. And I was exploring several options, including asking for a sabbatical. But as you know, in India, we very rarely, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, we rarely talk about sabbaticals, especially when you're at your career peak.
Right.
But what happened was in 2012, Kingfisher, where I was vice president network planning and headed a department that oversaw 500 daily flights, it went through a financial downturn and eventually shut. Of course, we were still working on recovery plans and working with other international airlines, etc. But I kind of knew that this was it for me, and I needed to look at something completely different. But like I said, what was that something different? And unfortunately, in December 2012, we had this horrific gang rape of Jyoti Singh, who was multiple times gang raped on a bus in Delhi. And it was a shocking incident, not only in India, but also abroad. And many people wanted to do something. There were candlelight vigils, there were demonstrations. And I felt I needed to do more than just post on Facebook pages and participate in these demonstrations, all of which are important in putting public pressure. But I was at that point in my life where I felt I was ready enough to do something about it. And earlier that month, I was part of a Swedish Institute management program on CSR, corporate social responsibility and sustainability in business. And we were introduced to Harass Map Egypt, which was crowd mapping sexual violence. And at the time when I heard about it, I thought, okay, that's a cool idea. We need it in India, but I didn't think it was urgent until the gang rape took place. And just listening, you're talking about storytelling, right? During the gang rape, all I could hear were stories of women, my friends around me, sharing what had happened to them over the years. I was emotionally triggered to remember my own stories of witnessing sexual harassment on buses, trains, at the workplace, which I'd kind of forgotten, parked at the back of my mind. And then I realized we need to collect this data, document it somewhere, because if we are not doing it, it's lost. And the official statistics definitely do not reflect the true nature and size of the problem or women's lived experiences. And since I came from the corporate world, which was heavily, dependent on data for everyday decision making, I thought, how can we even start to find solutions if we don't really know what is the extent of the problem? And that's what led me to launch Safe City literally 10 days post the gang rape. And since then, it was a journey of unlearning a lot of things, relearning, learning, being open, being humble, being patient, because the social sector works on a different time clock than the corporate sector. But it's been very rewarding. The last 7.5 years, I have grown as an individual, and storytelling has been central because it's these women's stories that are documented on our map, or not just women. We actually, up till now, don't really ask for your gender. So there have been, some men who've also posted their stories. But it's these stories that give you a deeper understanding of what's happening where and at what time. And then from there, you can use these same stories to engage the people around you who form your community, whether it's on an educational campus, whether it's in a residential association or a corporate or a workplace, and then demand for accountability, whether it is better policies, better vigilance services, whether better infrastructure like public toilets or street lighting. But until you have those stories, and in a way, those stories form the data set, until then, you can't really effectively solve the problem, even if you wanted to.
Absolutely. I think stories are like these very impactful memory magnets, and each one of us has a story to tell. It's just that we first need to empower ourselves enough to be able to narrate them, because we don't know who's going to get impacted, by even a simple story that we might have discounted. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to come back to you in a while, but I'm going to move on to your case writer, Hamsa Sundar. Hamsa?
Yes, Professor.
Yes. So you've been working in the space of education and gender, which is a large, vast topic, right? So what drew you to gender violence in particular, and what led you to the work that ELSA does?
Yes, thank you, Professor. So it's great being here, and the inspiration for me to work on this case really is because I was able to connect with ELSA, and not only to the cause that she was fighting for, but personally about where she came from and her journey. Because when I joined AIM, I got a lot out of AIM. When I joined, I was like a fish out of water, because I also came from the corporate sector, and I was making a transition into the development sector. So I related to her a lot, and I had my undergraduation in technology. So it was very inspiring for me in how she used technology to solve a problem, and that was a social issue, and how she made the transition, to leverage her strengths that she got from the corporate sector, and how she built her network to connect with the right stakeholders. That story was very inspiring for me, and I wanted to say that. And Elsa is being very nice here, saying that I picked her story, but it's great inspiration, because in a country like ours, I mean, to work on this cause, it's something that everybody can relate to, and abuse is happening all over the world. It's happening everywhere, and it's something that we all can relate to. And I think we say that 1 in every 3 women have been abused, but people don't talk about it. But to create an anonymous platform where we are able to establish that, so giving voice to people, giving voice to value to the voice, or giving voice to value, it's empowering women to speak up about these issues. So that was what drove me, was an inspiration for me to work and understand more about the work that she did. So that was a great inspiration. And even over the years after that, since 2015, I've been following her work regularly. And I mean, they've been doing amazing work, and the partnerships that they've drawn, and it's huge inspiration. So this is what it, this is my inspiration, actually.
Right. No, and it is inspiring for sure. And as you rightly said, we need that collective voice, right? It's not enough to just be aware of a problem. We need to come together to address it, right? Thank you, Hamsa.
Thank you.
Ms. Lubna Hashmat. Lubna heads the Civil Society Human and Institutional Development Program, CHIP, right, as it's called. And it's one of the leading civil society organizations in Pakistan. Lubna, you've been in the development sector for over 28 years, and you believe that impact has to be both at the human as well as the institutional levels, right? Tell us a little bit about how CHIP has scaled that work on both fronts.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. It is my immense pleasure to join this webinar for a learning purpose and sharing my experiences from Pakistan. So we were one of the programs of Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. And the difference between other programs of Swiss and us was that the entire team had a passion to develop the country. And we were allowed to have some small experimentation. And during those times, I was also young, and the other team members were also very young and passionate about bringing some change in the society and see the impact ourselves. So we started experimenting small models, which we used to call HID model, and in which we believed that the country can develop if we develop its local people and local institutions. And besides these two key elements, we started encouraging local people to mobilize their local resources to solve their own problems. So instead of depending on government for the larger development solutions, we started looking out with a small magnifier to identify local resources and utilizing those resources to solve local problems. And once our small experiments were successful, we started scaling up those at the union council level, and then district level, and then at the provincial level. And that's how this model started recognition within the Swiss programs. And there was a debate that if we are good at something, we should be allowed to scale up operations beyond Swiss concentration. And that's how we did.
And you had Nazreen work on, CHIP. And Nazreen has been involved, of course, in various urban and rural developmental programs in Pakistan. And I believe she's also worked with CHIP before, right, Nazreen? Nazreen?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Tell us how it was working with Lubna and CHIP in two very different capacities, right? One as a coordinator and now as a case writer.
Yeah, actually, when I started working with CHIP, I was actually coming from a rural area. My inspiration behind this case was because I myself was coming from a rural area where the government system was not very strong, and rural people, many of them, they don't have, they don't get the opportunities to actually develop themselves. So for me, when I worked with CHIP, so the model itself, like this HID model, at one side, it developed the capacities of humans, and the other side, the local institution. So when I started working with them, it was really like, for me, it was a thing that when we develop the local institution and local people, they can have, they can work and develop themselves within their own capacities, within their own resources. So they don't depend on the government structure or any other. So for me, it was like planting a seed. This concept was like planting a seed. Just like a plant, you grow a seed, and then with proper watering and food, it grows with the passage of time. And then the time comes when it gives you the fruit and shade as well. And with the fruit and the shade, it also encourages the new seedlings as well. So for me, this was like, this concept was very important because we are coming from a developing country where resources and even the potentials are there, but their identification is very difficult. And there are not a lot of people who can identify the potential, and then they can grow those potential. So for me, this was like the women and the team, they are working in those areas that are very hard to reach, and there are no government systems, but still there are people and leaders who can reach them. And they can develop their capacities, and then those people can rise themselves. They can work for themselves within their own resources. So this was inspiration. And when I joined AIM. Before AIM, I worked with CHIP, and then when I came back, I again joined CHIP. And this was like, it gives you the opportunity to actually not only explore different cultures, but also work with different people having different cultures, different resources, and not in a box. Like, you can't actually, you don't apply the same strategies and same model for all the people. So actually explore different strategies and different model for different kind of people coming from different districts and different regions. So for
yeah, I'm sure CHIP must have been an organic choice for you in terms of working on the case, since you've had the history with them. Thank you very much for that sharing.
Thank you.
Dr. Leah Pakis, she's the president of UNGNARS, an organization that looks out for the rights of nurses in the Philippines. And she also represents the organization and holds a seat in Congress. And from what I understand from her story, Dr. Leah found her purpose way back, even when she was a kid, shadowing her mother, who would go and deliver babies and make these home visits. Dr. Leah, tell us more. Tell us what divide or change you saw in the nursing sector here, and what prompted you to act on it.
My advocacy of service started when I was young, when I was shadowing my mother, when she is there delivering babies of our neighbors who cannot go to the hospital. So she will ask me to cut the thread so that she can tie the umbilical cord. And it continued when I was a public health nurse serving the children in the schools. And then I also work in the States, but I also started teaching our young when I became the Dean of St. Luke's College of Nursing. I became the president of the Philippine Nurses Association, and my advocacy again started there when I found out that our nurses are exploited in our country with high risk. The work conditions are not that good and the salary is very low. So I started my advocacy there and continued when I organized the UNGNARS, and it went into UNGNARS party list, wherein I became congressman in the 16th Congress of the Philippines. Until we won the salaries of nurses in 2019, that it is in our law that nurse one should have a minimum salary grade of salary grade 15, which has not been given for almost 20 years. But now it is given to them this year.
Nice. Nice. I mean, you're right. Our nurses are indeed our silent heroes of the health system, and we're so glad that you are lending your voice, to amplify their impact and watch out for their rights. Charisma, who is also our MC for today, and she is the president of the Sulu State College. She worked around Dr. Leah's and UNGNARS's work, and she has completely focused her research around UNGNARS. Charisma, do you want to tell us a little more about what attracted you to this particular sector and particularly to the work of Dr. Leah?
Yes, Prof. Harini. Knowing Dr. Pakis, I have already acknowledged about her most coveted awards, which I was really impressed and astounded. She is a recipient of the country's most prestigious award for those nursing profession. We call it as the Anastasia Giron-Tupas Award. She's also a recipient of the most outstanding professional by the Professional Regulation Commission. And she's also an awardee from the National Philippine Government for Nurses. However, this is not the main reason why I choose her for my capstone paper. It is the reason which I believe is beyond and more than these awards. Her compassion and her far-reaching vision for the Filipino nurses, which made her outstanding and inspiring for me as a nurse and a leader. I could still remember Ma'am Leah I was at that Jose Rizal University to witness the oath-taking of the newly registered nurses when I heard a powerful voice delivering her speech. And this still resounded on my mind up to today when she said the Filipino nurses are the care specialists, the silent heroes of the healthcare system. But she said, we lost respect in the dignity of the nursing profession because we allowed this to happen. So it has struck me, Professor, personally because I am also a nurse. And from her standpoint, I can understand her need to create change to uplift the plight of nurses. She is a dedicated individual, relentlessly fighting for everything that she thinks that matters to her, her principal and the nurses. She has inspired many people. She has a clear vision to address the needs of the nurses. Her works, her advocacy, and her values, I think, will define her as the nurse of the 21st century. And that would make her strong.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So I'm sure that's a very close cause to your heart, right? I mean, the fact that you are a nurse yourself, and it
Yes.
must have been a fabulous learning experience for you to have worked so closely with Dr. Leah. So once again, welcome all of you. I look forward to a rich conversation with each one of you today, right? Change is always difficult, right? And when that change has to happen against cultural norms, existing biases, government regulations, it just gets so much more heightened, right? What do you think has been different or difficult as a woman as you've been driving this change? Why don't we begin with Elsa? Why don't you tell us how different or difficult it has been as a woman to drive this change?
So I believe that change is the only constant in life.
True.
I also believe it's a mindset. So if you are comfortable with change in your life, then you half the battle is won. And I've always, not I've always, but I've learned to be comfortable with change. And if you look at my career graph as well, even if I spent in one industry and only two airlines, every 3 years or 4 years, I kind of changed my profession in a way. I was a flight attendant, safety instructor, and so on and so forth, ending up in strategy. And then again, I made a complete shift. So when you talk about change, you have to be adaptable. So one is internal. What are the qualities you need to have? So an open mindset, the ability to adapt, the ability to scan your horizon, look for cues of what's coming and prepare in a way. So you might not have the skills yourself, but now we have access to online, so you can do all of that online. There are so many courses and upskill yourself. And lastly, you can also talk to a lot of people. So that's at an individual level, right? And ask for help. Second is about the society around you, your family and your community. And as a woman, we know in patriarchal societies like in India, women are actually relegated to being second-class citizens. Now, people might get outraged that I'm saying it, but it's true. Look at any statistic on gender, and you only have to go to our Niti Aayog's. Niti Aayog is our government agency that has the responsibility of reporting to the United Nations our performance on the various SDGs. And SDG 5, which is on gender equality, has various metrics. If you go to that site, we are pouring poorly on every indicator pretty much, whether it is representation and leadership at the political level, maternal health, wage parity, violence against women, so on and so forth. Right. So what does that tell you? That you have to fight a lot of battles, which means you have to be internally very strong. You have to have your value system and your strong compass, internal compass that guides you and helps you fight these gender norm stereotypes that are constantly bombarding you from your family, your society, and the world around you, right?
Right.
Now, I was personally very lucky in a way, because I was born in a very liberal family. Nobody forced me to do anything. They supported my decisions and have always, treated my brother and my sister and myself equally. But not everybody is fortunate. And I see that. And therefore, a large part of our work is on ecosystem building. How do you prepare the world around you to recognize gender equality, to be gender sensitive, to have gender not as a siloed initiative that you're working on, but as part of everything that you do. And if it is part of your DNA, then the world will be definitely equal. So you have to constantly question your unconscious bias, your implicit bias as to how are you treating people, how are you thinking about an issue, how are you acting on it. And as the leader of an organization, or even if you are not the leader of the organization, are you contributing to those harmful practices that subdue women and relegate them to the second-class citizenship? Now, in India, our constitution actually provides for that equality, but in reality, you're not allowed to live it. And so also in many parts of the world. So it's up to each of us to question it and change it. And lastly, at the end of the day, if you don't build your own ability to manage and adapt to this change, you won't be able to fight these structural systemic systems around you.
Right. Yes, so well said. I think it is about strengthening yourself from the inside out to fight those external battles. But for that, I guess we have to first feel empowered enough. Right? Yes. Thank you very much. Lubna, how is the scene in Pakistan? How easy or difficult was it for you?
Yeah. So not very different from what Indian colleague has shared, but some of the aspects are more intense as well. So I would like to highlight 2-3 key points which I faced as a challenge, and then I was able to manage it. The family from which we come from, I was not very lucky, as the other colleague was coming from a liberal family. So I had to face all those family challenges as well, and how to break those gender barriers. There are certain standards which are good for female, not good for male. There are certain professions, there are certain jobs which we are allowed to do and not allowed to do. So I had to face those stereotypes that whether I can do the job or not, whether I can stay the night outside home or not, whether I can travel for overnight field visits or not, whether I can interact with men in a community conversation or not. So I had to fight in my family first before I get out of the home and convince communities and others. And the type of work, the profession which I opted to is, since being an anthropologist, I was into community development, where we have religious rigidity, we have cultural conservativity. So we have to break all those bottlenecks or challenges with a consistent approach. So my struggle contained 2-3 main things. One, I should be a role model myself, with my persistence, with my integrity as a person, and with my commitment and sharp focus on my target. What do I want to do? So if I want to bring a social change, then I have to deliver it first at my home, within my social circle, and then I would be strong enough or influenced enough for the community at large. So that's how I was able to.
Yeah, our struggles are also different, and yet each one's struggle is important, right? I love it that you say that, we have to first start with that inner dialogue, right? What we are telling ourselves. You decided to be that role model, and I guess everything else then follows through, right? Thank you very much, Lubna. Charisma, how is it in the Philippines? Do you have anything to add to that in terms of how difficult or different it's been for you? Charisma?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah. In the Philippines, as a women leader, it's also difficult, especially in this VUCA world. It's a fact that the role of women can be difficult in maneuvering change that we want to see in the community. However, I know it is difficult, but I also know it is not impossible. Sometimes you cannot find the common ground between you and your constituents. You get a lot of criticisms, feedback, and resistance. However, I was able to manage some of these circumstances by simply listening and providing a synergistic solutions where we can have a shared vision and output to the problem presented to us. One thing I learned, if you cannot have a shared vision, it doesn't mean one's visions is to be compromised. Women, I believe, are creative, flexible, and powerful. We can always find solutions that will adhere to the values and principles of our constituents. I am delighted that more and more women today are now empowered living in the VUCA world. We have many optimistic minds that see hardship not as a challenge, but as an opportunity. That is why every experience for them is a chance for them to grow. Through relentless pursuit of our dreams and aspirations, backed up by our allies, there has been many significant contributions in the society. Prof. Harini?
Thank you, Charisma. Hamza, if I can ask you maybe, with the whole lockdown and COVID impacting the poorest of the poor, and we see the effects on communities every day, right? How has your work impacted or changed, or even your research, right? How is all of this helping these communities in this much needed time? Hamza? Has she lost her connection? Dr. Leah, why don't you share a little bit about that? How, being in the front lines, how has your work and UNGNARS's support during this time changed the way communities have been impacted? And I also know you have some additional advocacies that have sprung up during the lockdown. Maybe you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yes. I am now the president of the Prison Fellowship International, Pilipinas, and I am now advocating for those persons in the jails that they be given better life opportunities so that they can serve better a country. And I have now a program on the God's Agenda Philippines, wherein many of our countrymen and many of our churches today are out because of the pandemic. They cannot pay the buildings. They don't have money. Our people have no money to buy food and all of those necessities. So we are now having a program wherein we could give a financial education and how we can give livelihoods, how to open cooperatives so that we can teach them how to fish and not to give them fish.
Okay, and this is one of your latest advocacies.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Nazreen, you've been working at the grassroots level, right? So what has changed, or how exactly is all of that being impacted during this time?
So, for example, at community level, this pandemic.
You're breaking up. I think we might have lost a connection. Okay. So Nazreen, sorry, you were breaking up. You might want to start over. No? Okay. Right. Elsa, how about you? Oh, sorry. Nazreen, are you still speaking?
So, like,
Nazreen, we lost you in between. We lost you in between. We couldn't hear a thing. You might want to start over.
So sorry.
No worries. Go on.
Yeah. Sorry. So when we were
Nazreen, I think your connection is quite poor. Why don't you log off and log on again? And we'll draw you into the conversation once you're back. Elsa, I think during the lockdown, domestic violence stats have been a little scary, right? And how does Red Dot cope with that? Well, any new initiatives that you're doing, particularly during the lockdown, to face that?
Absolutely. So thanks for raising this
in different programs, special communities, it really hits them hard.
Nazreen, you might want to log off and log on again because your connection is very choppy. So once you come back, I'm going to draw you back into the conversation. Right. So we now have Elsa sharing a little bit about what's going on with domestic violence during COVID. But I'm going to come back to you in very soon. Actually, you might want to log off and come back. Yes, Elsa.
So during the lockdown, a lot of domestic violence cases have been reported. In fact, the National Commission for Women within the first 3 weeks recorded almost 100% increase on the number of cases. And, India had one of the very strict lockdowns in the world where we had just 4 hours advance notice, and there was no mobility, no transportation, and people didn't really know what to do. So not only were you trapped in the home with your abuser and perpetrator, but also there was no access to services, like shelter homes weren't accepting women because there was no testing. You couldn't go to your alternate accommodation or to your friend's place or your parents' place because other society and apartment complexes weren't allowing people from outside to come in. E-passes weren't easily available. Also, in cases where you did go to the police station, sometimes the police station was a COVID zone, or the police did not file it in the right category. In the family court system, the cases that were pending, the spouses started reneging on their alimony payments, etc. So we as an organization, we added domestic violence to our crowd map for reporting because we were flooded with calls. Prior to COVID, we were focused on sexual violence and harassment in public spaces. So this was a new category of violence that we started to work on. We also introduced a peer listening circle online every Friday. And thus far, we have supported more than 25 women and men with socio-psychological support. Other than that, we also filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court of India to list the domestic violence services as essential. The reason being, right now the lockdown has been lifted, but for the next 1 year or maybe 2 years, we will go through periods where there'll be lockdowns imposed locally. And if you don't have these policies in place as to what is essential and what is not, more women might be left out of being able to access these services. Of course, another thing is that the helplines in India, there's no centralized helpline like the US where you call 911 and then figure out what kind of help you need. Here, every single body has its own number and it's very confusing. It's not well known and so on and so forth. So this is what we as an organization have done. Of course, when the Supreme Court hearing came up, they redirected us to the government, which is like a very slow process to get those guidelines issued. So we started a change.org petition, talk about storytelling, which we started this session with, so trying to get people, and more than 30,000 signatures have been, obtained thus far. And we've also tried to write media articles. But we are still hopeful that these guidelines will be issued well in time, as well as investment going forward. Because we have to also think about what kind of cities do we want post-COVID. And we definitely don't want the previous kind of cities that we had, where it was not safe for women and girls to travel to different parts of the city late at night, or just explore. So we need to change the norms. And as an organization, we've done a lot of sessions called knowledge cafes, educating over 7,000 people in the last 6 months on their rights, on the different forms of abuse, the remedial measures under the law, because India doesn't have a shortage of the laws, but it's the implementation that's a problem. And then also how we can help through Safe City by collecting all these stories and making them available in the public domain, so that there's pressure in and by itself with the data for authorities to act.
Right. Now, this is a very painful topic, especially for some of us who are watching these gory acts from afar and feel helpless in terms of, helping them. And I like what you're saying about, yes, lockdowns are going to be the new normal. And it's not just about the policies, but it's also about having the adequate help in place, right? And I'm glad that you haven't forgotten the men along the way, right? So very nice. I think that's what we really need. Lubna, I see a comment from Facebook where I think this is somebody from Afghanistan saying that yes, these situations, these stories all resonate, and they are pretty much, similar in terms of context, but certain countries have it a lot more difficult. And this person feels that we need committed help, right? You, I know, have worked both in Pakistan as well as Afghanistan, right? So tell us a little more about how different it is there, especially now during this, lockdown and COVID and everything.
In Pakistan or in Afghanistan? Both.
In Afghanistan, because the question is from there.
Okay. So I have not been to Afghanistan after the lockdown, but I'm closely in touch with some Afghan colleagues where we are helping an Afghan women entrepreneur to come back because she was attacked by some terrorist, and her women enterprise was all abolished, and she is in the process of re-establishing it in Kabul city. We are in close contact with her for remote coaching and guidance that how she can undertake market study and reestablish the center. So what problems we have been told by those Afghan ladies remotely are that they have very limited access to internet services. So after lockdown, everything is on virtual system. And hence the access and utilization of those support systems, which helps you to connect with the entire world, is very, very limited and restricted. It became their life more vulnerable and more limited. The second problem which was shared with us is about literacy levels. All those women who were part of this, this was a sewing factory which used to produce uniforms and for the army people and for schools and colleges. So after this lockdown and after this education system and school system being stopped, their individual services and the collective services are also under the extreme process. And those women who are able to have access to those support structures, internet and other services, their literacy levels are very low to be able to have utilize those services. So one of the, there are three persons with disability, two blind and one hearing and speech. They were able to devise a mobile application which offers interpretation services, not only to person with disability in terms of sign language or talking softwares, but also interpret different languages. So in the absence of those internet services, and often if services are available, expensive services, these poor ladies are not able to utilize. So these are the challenges which people face, and generally people like us who have liberty of having education plus access to internet services, we are easily converted to virtual system of official working. But if we imagine person with disability, or if we imagine person living in remote areas, hard to reach areas, and if we imagine person with disabilities having no affordability, economic challenges, uh, what are we doing for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I can only tell the person who asked this question from Afghanistan, yes, there are a lot of committed people, and people like Lubna are effecting, the much needed change at various levels, right? I don't know if Nazreen is back. Nazreen, are you back? I don't see her yet, but as somebody who has been a crusader for diversity of thought, I don't particularly believe that we need more women in any sector simply to tick off, the gender box, right? We need women for their unique perspectives. We need women who have a differentiated thought that stems from their backstories. And that's when any sector, and particularly so the development sector, can it grow, can it innovate, can it move forward, right? And yes, it has been encouraging to see several women equipping themselves in the development sector, and the MDM is a classic example of that. I see more and more women with every new batch, but we still are a long way behind, right? And as a social entrepreneur who focuses on empowering leaders from the impact sector, I'm just curious to see where you think the gap lies and how we can bridge that gap. Right? Charisma, do you want to kick off that particular conversation?
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Harini. I think as women, the most important thing for us to possess is the voice. Because voice can be powerful for us to take different roles, significant one that could spark change in the community. The role of women leaders is crucial to empower another women in the field of leadership. They should serve as an inspiration. But the question is, how do we inspire them? I think
how do we get them in, and then how do we empower them? So there seems to be a gap at different levels. Yes. Right. Yeah. Elsa, do you have anything to add to that? What do you think, or how do you think this is changing in India?
Well, I think we need affirmative action, because unless there is intention and investment, it's not going to change. So take, for example, we have a measly 14%, less than 14% of women in parliament. How is that going to change to even bring it to 33%? And 33% is not representative of the population of our country. It should be 50% ideally. So unless you make the effort, so initially you might just have to have quotas to fill the numbers, and then later you can do away with the quotas when you have achieved the numbers and you recruit on merit. I'm not saying that it should be just plain quotas. You also have to have mentoring. You also have to have skill building, capacity building. You need to have role models. In a way, the case studies are a great idea, because I'm writing a book on women in India and the SDGs, and it was so hard to find these women, because you find women, the same women, okay, which is a very tiny percentage of a country. And then most organizations are run by men. So who's doing the work? Actually, if you see, the second line and the third line are probably women.
Yeah.
But why are they not in top leadership positions? And unless there's affirmative action, you can't do it. So take, for example, when I was vice president network planning at Kingfisher Airlines, every time I recruited, in fact, not most, all the time, I would get male CVs. And I asked HR, I said, why are there no women CVs? And this is, I'm talking about 10, 15 years ago, before I started doing the gender work, right? So they told me, the skills that are needed are engineering. I said, did I say engineering? No, right? I'm going to have my own protocols for recruitment, which were based on, ability. So I would give them different kinds of logical reasoning tests and, skills tests. And I said, you get me from any discipline, I don't care. But unless I have, and I have women CVs also to consider from, I will not make my decision. So once they got me the CVs, then I would put everybody through the same set of tests and interviews and then select on merit and not only on academic qualification. And that's how I ended up, without any intention, with at least 1/3 of my team as women. And they have gone on to Middle Eastern Airlines, which again is a very patriarchal society over there, and have done extremely well in a highly strategic department called network planning, which was a male bastion before that. You have very few women there. So if everybody did that and created those pipelines and fixed the broken bottom rung, so to speak, and then if men did their fair share at home, if policies supported parental leave and other family care functions like childcare, emotional care, and domestic care, which tends to fall on a woman, and if that is all equally divided, I'm sure you will have more women.
Yeah, yep, you're right about that. And, you're also right about saying that, merit, yes, is one thing, but most times merit is confused with diversity in terms of a demographic, right? And that's what I'm trying to understand here. Just a couple of women's CVs. Yes.
Also, merit tends to be equated to experience, right, which women don't necessarily have, because if you've not done it, how will you? But if you're then given a chance and the skill building to accompany it, you might shine. Right. And so therefore, are we always looking for the expert, or can we just open it up to people who can get the job done? And the last thing is, women intuitively, because of the socio-cultural conditioning from birth, you are poor risk takers. So you have to build your innate capacity to take risks. Yes. Men, given an opportunity, will just grab it and then figure out whether they can do it or not. Whereas women will first consider if they're 100% perfect for that position and can do it, and only then will commit to it. We have to stop doing that.
Actually, we are seeing that from the school level, right? Primary school level. That's where the research begins. And sadly so, risk-taking, as much as we've associated it with leadership and, we kind of look up to it as a quality, most leaders, and many of them sadly being men, have kind of been great risk takers during this particular time, and they've just gambled away lives. And we've seen that, right? So again, risk taking in your own way, and just putting that out there in an authentic manner, I think that by itself will allow for these women to stand out, right? So yes, absolutely. Lubna, do you see any of this being different in Pakistan? Do you see more women coming out and participating in the development sector? We have one Nazreen here, but I don't think Nazreen is back online. But Lubna, do you see a change, a trend?
Yes, in Pakistan, system is changing. A lot of gender barriers have started to break. But what we see is that as the light comes from the, when you go closer to the sun, there is more light, and when you go remotely, so in remote areas, we don't see many women coming out and facing similar barriers. So what is important for us as a women leader, or as a responsible professional, if I may call, that we start a shadow leadership development process within our social circles. And we can do, it is not that we limit ourselves being a role model. We have to transfer our strengths and skills and inspire young people, especially youth. So I'm also in the process of getting a counseling unit registered so that we guide especially young girls and person with disability who have limited opportunities and limited access to those uh, services and guidance in their schools or in their social circles. And then we are also in the process of having satellite unit of those counseling center in remote areas. Although the discussion which we are having, that recognition of a leader within an organizational domain, I have a different view. I believe if you closely observe the family system, we may often see women acting as a leader, decision-making role. So we have to identify and study the characteristics which helps them to become, to assume this role of decision making or being a dictator of those families, and then help young girls within those systems so that we can encourage them to come out and take those risks and bring the social change. It is a subtle process. We have to pick up certain topics and start the change process from within those without challenging those cultural norms and religious practices.
Right. I love it that you say that, we have to watch how these girls shine even at the family level. Because, when we talk about purpose or when we talk about our differentiators, they all sound so lofty. And you can't just go to a course and say, well, I found it, right? You have to realize it. And I guess a lot of these profound aspects lie in the mundane, right? In our everyday work, in the way we engage with others, right? In the way we lead, maybe our brothers and sisters at home or the family, right? And yes, you're absolutely right about that, in terms of just being aware as to what those innate qualities might be, and then providing a platform to kind of hone the same, right? Yes. Hamza, I see that you are back. What about your perspective around this? How do you think we can have more women in the development sector? You made that big jump from the corporate sector to the development sector. How nurtured did you feel, or what do you think lacks there?
Sorry, I got disconnected, and thank you, Prof.
No worries.
So, firstly, to start off, I think we need to have that. Women need to feel empowered within, like Ms. Lubna said. You need to have that self-belief, and it also starts with the family and your immediate circle around. And and I feel we need to remove some unconscious biases that are around women leaders. Like you may make certain decisions, there are certain stereotypes attached to certain women leaders. Like if you behave in a certain, if you're co-creating, then you're weak, or if you're aggressive or challenging, you're too aggressive. We need to remove these unconscious biases. We need to have an inclusive culture and remove these barriers. So, and this starts right from a very different from a mindset change, from a very educational level, from a societal change. So this mindset change needs to happen right from men, from women, from our families, from everywhere. So it goes deep down, I feel. So to bring on women, first there needs to be self-belief, and then a mindset change for both men and women. Like as I said, men can be great advocates as well, and women need to help women out. So I think we see a lot of that sometimes not happening. I think if women can help women each other out and create these communities to share and talk about their issues, or talk about what the success is, that will be great as well. So
yeah, yes, you're right about that. We need to be looking out for each other. Dr. Leah, do you see nurses stepping up and taking on leadership positions, or do they still remain those silent heroes?
No, we should get out from that box of fear and go to the box of courage, because we need to teach our children assertiveness, and so that we can be able to face changes. Because if we will just tell our children, our girls, that keep quiet, no, we need to teach them how to reason out politely, humbly, so that later in life they can be able to say to people that I can speak up. I can tell you that I can fight for my right. Because in our patriarchal society, they don't want women to rise up. But I think it's now the time for us. When will it start? It should start now.
Right. So you think they need to first find their voice, and then we need to give them a platform that kind of amplifies that voice. Yes, yes, much needed. Absolutely. We will be taking questions from the audience as well. So if you have questions for any of our panelists, or if it's just a general question, you could just park it on Q&A, and I will then, bring it forward. So if there are questions, please do put it down on the Q&A. I see one here from Madam Bernadette. She asks, as a woman leader, in fact, I don't even want us to call it that. So as a leader, where do you start? And what will make you stop? And I think this is for anybody on the panel. As a leader, she wants to know where you will begin the process of understanding or getting on that journey of leadership. So it probably will have to begin with where Dr. Leah just ended in terms of finding a voice and then connecting that voice with something you truly care about. But yes, Dr. Leah, please add in.
We can start with what we have. We cannot start with what we do not have. So if you have that commitment, if you have that power, and you have that ability to look at those conditions that you need change, start from that. Start from that and stop only when you have succeeded.
Right. Anybody else wants to add in to that question?
Lubna, if I can share my
Yes, please.
One point I would like to clarify is that when we began working, we don't realize that we would be recognized as a leader. At least I did not realize when Nazreen contacted me, this was a big surprise. Okay, I'm a leader. I don't know. So, but in my life, when I started my work, I had 3 key principles. So one principle was that I always took initiative. No matter anybody else would like to volunteer or not, but I was the first one to volunteer for everything, whether I have a skill or I do not have a skill. And I made sure that I learn and I deliver. So that helped me getting recognition of my work gradually. So you have to be initiative taker always. Come forward, volunteer your services, and do not never compare anything with your financials. It is very important that you're committed for change. So what drives us is the cause or the change we lead. So in my life, all my life, I never look back to any financial compensation but my work. Okay, this is how.
How well said. Thank you. And the thing is, leadership is not a title that we go after, right? This is more an organic byproduct of how others see us. So I don't think this is really something that we can work towards. And as Lubna rightly said, you should be more driven by the work that you do and not the leadership title. And then, yes, it will happen. People may look up to you as a leader or even write a case study about you and the work that you're doing, as is the case here. Right? Elsa, do you want to chip in to that question?
So all of us are leaders, right? When I'm asked about who's my role model, it's my mom. Now, is she a well-known famous personality? Maybe not. So each of us is a leader as well as a follower in different aspects of our life. And like, Leah said earlier, that do what you do best in the space that you are in. You don't have to quit what you're doing to form an NGO, or you don't have to start something completely different. Just do the best thing based on your values in your own society. Start with your family. And that in itself will be a game changer.
Right. Yeah. Connect your values, passions, and goals, and don't wait for that time, like you said, to start something or to do something in a more amplified manner. Right. It's going to have to happen today. Nazreen, welcome back. I see that you've got your connection again. Would you like to add something to that in terms of what you think takes to be a leader?
I think it's not about whether we are doing a great things or small things, because even very small things, it impacts a lot. It's maybe a greater thing for another person. Yeah, your small action can be a big thing for another one. Just like Miss Lubna said that when I contacted her, she was really surprised. But the way Chip was working and her compassionate style of leadership, it gave me a great opportunity for myself that I can also work like her. I can also be an agent of change for many of the communities that where I am working, whether it's with the CHIP or any other organization or any part of the world.
Right. So, yes. Thank you. I'm going to open up, for questions from our case authors to our leaders here. So Hamsa, Nazreen, and Charisma, if you have questions for any of our leaders, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, I know you have a question. So yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So Elsa, this question is on Safe City, basically, and the work that you have been doing. So Safe City, and Red Dot Foundation have forged several partnerships over the years. So I have basically two questions, and I will ask both together. And one is starting with your Urban Thinkers campaign. So you have a lot of campaigns that are running where you have a lot of dialogues that you do, and I'm interested to know if to understand whether this leads to any policy outcomes or if there are any initiatives that have happened because of this. That's my first question. And the next one is initially in 2015 when we interacted, you were working with the University of Pennsylvania because Safe City has a lot of data, and there's so much that we can do with this data. And right now, I know that you're working with Datadog, and they are very well known for the kind of patterns that they draw from all the data that you're using. But so what have, as an organization, what have we Safe City drawn from this data, and what can we do as a society or as an individual or, or an institution? What are the lessons or actions that you think are drawn from this?
Thank you. Those two are very good questions. So what can we do as individuals? Document your experiences. I know it's hard and I know it's very difficult, but we have no choice. We have to make this issue visible. It's 2020 and we are still talking about sexual and gender-based violence. There's so many other problems in the world like climate change that we should be focusing on, right? So yeah, so data is important. Now, these conversations that we have, and we have so many, we have Twitter conversations every week where we invite people to participate. We don't set out from the start thinking that a policy change is going to happen. We are creating that ecosystem where it's comfortable to talk about it and break the silence, right? Unless you're comfortable talking about it, how will more people come forward and chat with it? But they have led to a lot of important connections, a lot of important partnerships with us, with Red Dot. So for example, our latest one, so during COVID-19, since the start of the pandemic, we had a grant from, before the pandemic, we had a grant by Stanford to host 2 innovation labs on safe and inclusive cities. We did one in Delhi and then the pandemic hit us. We couldn't do the one in Mumbai. So we just transferred it online and we made it a live cast every Wednesday, inviting experts from around the world. Initially, it was just for us to fulfill the grant requirements, but also to expand our own understanding of what's happening. How are people coping with it? And then last month, we had the National Institute of Urban Affairs reach out to us and say, why don't you do more than just these live casts? Why don't you partner with us? And let's think of a project that we can do together. So we are now at the start of our project, very ambitious project called the Inclusive Cities Civic Innovation Accelerator. And it's a one-year project where in the beginning, we are going to crowdsource indicators for what is a safe and inclusive city, because there's no one metric. And then second is to look at innovations that are already there, give them a space on the NIUA site called the marketplace, so that we can then connect them with smart city CEOs around India. And then the last one is to really work with one smart city and deep dive, collect more crowdsourced data on the lines of Safe City, but more, and work with those authorities to identify how they can have preventive mechanisms for better governance. So can we predict through these data? So it's not very different from what I did in aviation as well. So in aviation, what did we do? We based our decisions on historical data and the trends and patterns that were emerging from there to forecast current and future business forecast scenarios which would influence current and future business decisions, right? We are using the same thing. Whatever people are reporting, that's historical data, trying to understand patterns and trends, and then making the best possible decisions. So that is one exciting outcome. The second one, that with all my live casts and all the conversations I have online, I did it more for me, okay, to help me get through the pandemic. But every day I have somebody saying, it's so inspiring to hear all these wonderful people who come and share their ideas on your live cast. We have learned so much. It is so positive. In a world which is so negative at the moment, you're grappling and you're looking for that hope. And these conversations actually help that. And by featuring 80% of my guests are women or more, you're showcasing all the role models who otherwise are never seen. It's always men. Look at any TV channel, look at any panel, they're all men. So if that's what you see, that's your reference point. But when you then see so many wonderful women from different countries doing different kinds of things, not just gender work, because if you have a panel on gender, it's filled with women, no men will show up, right? But if it's on finance, if it's on chemistry, if it's on, any technical matter, they will never have women, even though there are women experts. So I believe all of this is now what I call ecosystem support, and what have we been doing with the data? The data in itself is so valuable. But remember, when I started almost 8 years ago, crowdsourced data was not a valid data set. Today, increasingly, it's being recognized as a set that can be used complementary to existing data sets. Second is, at the start, I made a career shift. I wanted to help, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So over the years, I've learned what works, what doesn't work. I've understood the problem. I'm still learning, but I have a better understanding than 8 years ago. And so I can position us in a way, and COVID helps because it has kind of fast-tracked everyone to be comfortable in digital and using digital services. So hopefully our refurbished Safe City platform, which the Data Doc is helping us with, which will be launched next month, will be used in a big way to collect these stories, but also get civic authorities and police to use the data.
Oh, nice. Nice. Thank you. Any other questions? Charisma, Nazreen, for any of our leaders?
Prof. Harini,
yes,
I would like to
go ahead.
Dr. Leah Pakis. Ma'am Leah, we know that you had been fighting for the plight of nurses, I think almost 20 years now. You have been fighting for the problems in migration, underemployment, unemployment, and the non-implementation of Republic Act 9173. So where are the nurses now, ma'am? And what are your plans for the future? Thank you.
The nurses are now learning to be more inquisitive. They're learning now to ask their HR about their salaries. They're now learning how to talk to their chief nurses, and they're learning how to talk to their co-nurses. There's a lot to do, but we have started the first step, and Confucius said, 1,000 steps will always start with the first step. And we have done it. We have now the salary grade 15 for nurses. We must fight for the different positions in the local government units. We need to increase the salaries in the private institutions and to give more autonomy to the nurses so that they can move forward and they have their specialties. We need to move forward. We need to speak up. We need to fight for our rights.
Right. And I guess, as you rightly said, as these nurses find their voices and, as they use it and leverage it, I'm sure they're going to be getting to where you want them to, especially with you lending your voice to young nurse, right? Thank you. And Nazreen, do you have a question for Lubna at this point? Nazreen, do we have you? Or have we lost you? Okay, I'm not sure. We might have lost her connection again. But just to wrap things up, I'd like to quickly ask each of you, a very short answer to a trend that you would like to see, right, in terms of gender equality, or a change that you would like to make happen, right, in the near future. So I'm just going to go around the table and get each of your quick views before we wrap things up. Elsa, why don't we begin with you?
Gender equality starts at home. So raise your sons to do equal work and respect women.
Yes, thank you. Lubna?
Channelize your youth.
Sorry, could you say that again, please?
I would like to invest in youth of the country. So
right.
It's important to channelize their energies to right direction. And as Elsa said, that gender equality from your sons, I would like to have this gender equality in youth instilled in their blood and soul.
Nice. Yes, Nazreen? Nazreen?
I'm sorry, we lost her.
Okay. Hamza?
I think gender equality starts with us. We need to believe first, and then take it with the family and the society. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Charisma?
Gender equality, we have to treat everyone the same, and then all women must be empowered and must have a voice.
Okay, so more about empowerment, right? Dr. Leah?
Let our voices be heard. Speak up. Fight for your right.
Nice. Yes. So we have a theme there. Yes, it's all about getting that voice being heard. Yes. Nazreen?
So providing more opportunities, creating opportunities for ourselves and others.
Right. Yes. Okay. That collective voice and looking out for each other, as Hamza once said, a little earlier, I think all of that is what's going to help. Sheryl Sandberg, I remember her coming up with this, where she says, we cannot change if we are not aware of something, right? But the minute we have become aware of it, we can't help but change, right? The change is definitely going to happen. And each one of your stories, your research, your sharings, all of that has been around a keen awareness that has spurred an important change in your own unique ways, right? And so I just wish you all the very best as you scale that change and amplify the impact. It has been such a pleasure talking to each one of you. Thank you for making the time. All right, over to you, Charisma.
Okay, thank you, Professor Harini. It's so great to hear and learn new things from our leaders. The diverse and insightful ideas presented to us today will surely impact the community and will help future leaders. So I would like to thank our guests, Dr. Leah Pakis, Ma'am Elsa and Ma'am Lubna, as well as Hamza and Shasha. Thank you for your participation. Of course, I wouldn't want to end this without sharing with you the big picture. As you all know, AIM always provides new learning opportunities, and as an alumna, I can attest to that. On that note, leaders are champions of transformations. But to be able to succeed in this VUCA world, collaboration and giving voice to values matters. We need strong voice who never cease to ventilate the problems to the world despite criticisms. This is an important step to enable one to commit and empower others to voice, even if that means you are the last man standing. According to ML Shanahan, we all have a voice, some a whisper, some a roar. If you can roar, then roar for others. If you can only whisper, then keep trying. Every roar started small. That's it, of course. We wouldn't want to miss this photo opportunity with our guest today. Please turn on your camera. May I request all cameras to be on? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, say lead. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3, say inspire. One, last time, say transform.
Transform.
Okay, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this webinar. There is still a part 2 coming on October 29. New leaders, new learnings, and new opportunities for you to stay tuned. Remember, after and even during the pandemic, let us continue to lead, inspire, and transform. To the crazy thinkers out there, continue thinking crazy. By thinking crazy, you can think differently. You can use the power of your imagination to boost yourself to success. This is Charisma, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
We need to operationalize ideas. We have a lot of ideas to solve problems of the world.
How can we build and scale the new business models, products and services, marketplaces, partnerships, and alliances that will strengthen our resilience in the areas of food security, public health and wellness, education, and social cohesion and culture?